The town of Boko, in Benue State, wasn't known for its wealth, but it had a kind of peace that money could never buy. The streets were red from dust, the evenings smelled of roasted corn and suya, and children still played ten-ten under the moonlight. It was in this small, slow-paced town that Joy Agbo grew up, the last of four children, cheerful, brilliant, and full of dreams. At 11, she met Simon Oche, a 20-year-old apprentice at a mechanic workshop not too far from her school. Simon was one of those people life had tested early. His parents died in a motor accident when he was 16, leaving him to fend for himself and his younger sister. But even in hardship, there was a quiet strength in him, the kind that made people trust him easily. Joy noticed him first on her way home from school. His overalls were always smeared with engine oil, and his hands were dark from work, yet his smile never faded. He would wave and call out jokingly, "Auntie Schoolgirl, you are the most beautiful on the streets of Benue." She'd blush, laugh, and hurry away. It became a routine, their silent friendship born from everyday encounters. Weeks turned to months, and soon Simon started walking her home when it rained. He'd carry her school bag, careful not to stain it with grease. Her mother would smile and thank him with a warm, "God bless you, my son." Simon was respectful, never too forward, never boastful. When Joy's father needed help fixing the family's old motorcycle, Simon offered to do it for free. When Joy's younger brother fell ill, he helped drive them to the hospital using his client bike or car. It wasn't long before he became part of the family's rhythm, showing up on weekends, helping with chores, or sharing stories about his late mother's cooking. Joy admired him for his patience and quiet dedication. By the time she entered secondary school, Simon's kindness had deepened. Every month, he'd buy her notebooks, pens, and sometimes small gifts, earrings or ribbons for her hair. Her classmates teased her relentlessly. "Joy, your mechanic boyfriend is doing well. Your love is covered in grease." She'd laugh it off, pretending not to care, but in her heart, she felt proud. Simon might not have a fancy job or polished English, but he cared for her like she was his world. As she grew older, their friendship slowly turned into something more tender. He would sometimes walk her to evening church programs, their hands brushing by accident, each touch sending a spark neither of them could explain. At 16, Joy wrote her first WIAC exam. Her father delayed paying her registration fees, and the school threatened to remove her name from the list. Desperate, she cried that night. The next morning, Simon appeared at their door with an envelope. Inside was 7,000 naira, his entire savings. "Take it," he said softly. "You must write that exam. I'll be fine." Joy's tears spilled. She wanted to refuse, but he insisted. "Don't say no, Joy. You'll pay me back one day, not with money, but by becoming the woman I always knew you could be." From that moment, her heart belonged to him completely. Their love blossomed through the years, simple but deep. He'd visit her after work, sit with her under the mango tree behind her house, and they'd talk about dreams. She wanted to become a social worker. He wanted to own his own car repair shop. Sometimes Simon would look at her and smile. "One day, I'll wear a suit and come for your convocation. I'll stand tall when they call your name." She'd laugh shyly and tease him. "And I'll tell everyone that my boyfriend's hands may be greasy, but his heart is pure gold." Theirs was a love built on loyalty, sacrifice, and small, ordinary moments that meant everything. Years went by. Joy passed her exams, got her university admission letter, and Simon was the first person she ran to show it to. He held the paper like it was a trophy, pride glowing in his eyes. "You did it, my Joy," he whispered. "We did it." He celebrated more than her own parents did, buying soft drinks and meat pie for the neighbors, boasting proudly, "Our Joy is going to university." That night, under the soft hum of crickets, Joy made him a promise she believed with all her heart. "Simon, I'll never forget you. No matter where I go, I'll always come back to you." He smiled faintly, brushing her cheek with his thumb. "I'm not worried. I know your heart." Neither of them knew that the world outside Boko had a way of testing hearts, even the purest ones. The day Joy left Benue for the University of Jos was one of mixed emotions, laughter wrapped in tears. Her mother kept praying under her breath, her father gave the usual fatherly advice, and her siblings helped load her box into the bus. But it was Simon who stood at the back of the compound, quietly watching her, his heart torn between pride and fear. He had saved for months, skipping meals, taking extra jobs, just to make sure Joy had all she needed for school. Her parents paid the tuition, but Simon handled the rest: provisions, notebooks, foodstuff, and a small transistor radio she loved listening to. Before she boarded the bus, he pressed a small brown envelope into her hand. "For emergencies," he said. Inside was 15,000 rupees, his entire savings. Joy hugged him tightly. "I'll miss you," she whispered. "I'll miss you too," he replied, his voice low. "But this is your time. Go and make me proud." The bus pulled away, leaving Simon standing in the dust, watching the girl he had loved for over half his life disappear into the horizon. Life in Jos. University life was everything Joy had dreamed of, and more. Freedom, color, new faces, new experiences. She was suddenly surrounded by people from all walks of life, children of politicians, business tycoons, and wealthy traders. They dressed well, spoke with confidence, and carried themselves like they owned the world. Her first few weeks were simple. She focused on classes, cooked her own meals, and called Simon every night. He would ask 100 questions. Are you eating well? Are your roommates treating you fine? Do you have enough for handouts? He sent 7,000 rupees every month, a huge sacrifice for someone earning barely 25,000. "Don't worry, Joy," he'd often say. "One day I'll have my own workshop, and you'll never lack anything." But slowly, the world around her began to whisper new definitions of love and success. Her roommates, Rita, Gozi, and Peace, were lively and outspoken. They had boyfriends who drove sleek cars, bought iPhones, and sent them money just for upkeep. Rita once laughed after seeing Simon's name flash on Joy's phone. "Who still dates a mechanic in 2020? Babe, wake up. You're too fine to be suffering love." Joy chuckled awkwardly, defending him. "He's not just a mechanic, he's my best friend." "Best friend or boyfriend," Gozi teased. "You better upgrade, girl. Joss boys soon sweep you off your feet." At first, Joy brushed it off. Months later, Simon came to visit her in Jos. He arrived on a Saturday evening after an 8-hour road trip. His clothes smelled faintly of engine oil no matter how hard he washed, but his eyes glowed with excitement. He brought gari, groundnuts, dried fish, and a pair of shoes he'd saved to buy her. Joy was happy, genuinely, but when her roommates saw him, they exchanged knowing glances. Rita whispered loud enough for Joy to hear. "Babe, is that your man? He looks like my uncle's apprentice." Joy pretended not to hear. She smiled at Simon, tried to hide her discomfort, and took him out for a stroll. But deep down, she felt something she'd never felt before: embarrassment. That night, as Simon slept on a mat in the neighborhood, in her room, Joy lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her heart was torn. She loved him, yes, but the world around her made her feel he wasn't enough. She remembered Rita's words, "You're too fine to be suffering love." And suddenly, Simon's gifts didn't look as beautiful anymore. Love, letters, and distance. Over the next few years, Simon and Joy's relationship survived mostly through phone calls and text messages. He never failed to call, never forgot her birthday, and never missed a chance to send small tokens of love: recharge cards, provisions during strikes, and sometimes even 2,000 rupees just so she could eat better food. But as her final year approached, Joy began to change subtly. She no longer told her friends much about Simon. When they talked about boyfriends, she simply smiled and changed the subject. Her heart was slowly drifting. She didn't mean to, but the distance between Boko and Joss wasn't just geographical, it had become emotional. Still, Simon remained devoted. When she graduated, he organized a small party back home, balloons, food, and music. He invited neighbors and friends, boasting proudly, "Our Joy is a graduate, my girl doin' wonder." Joy returned home for a short break before NYSC posting, and Simon couldn't stop looking at her. She was more beautiful, more confident, and more distant. She spoke differently, dressed differently, and seemed always distracted. He noticed, but he didn't complain. He thought maybe it was stress from school or excitement about what lay ahead. He didn't know the world had already started pulling her away from him. That evening, he gave her a small silver necklace. "For your next journey," he said, "wherever you go, may it remind you that someone here prays for you every night." Joy smiled faintly. "You've always believed in me, Simon. I'll make you proud." "You already have," he said softly. As she left that night, she didn't know it would be one of the last peaceful evenings they would ever share. Then came her posting letter. When her NYSC posting came, Joy was overjoyed. Abuja, the federal capital, the city of dreams. She screamed with excitement, calling her friends, updating her WhatsApp status. "Abuja, here I come!" Simon was happy too, but deep inside, he felt uneasy. "Abuja is big," he told her. "Be careful with friends and men there. It's not like home." "Don't worry," she laughed. "I'll be fine. I know myself." He smiled, but couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting, something he couldn't maim. That evening, he sat alone under the mango tree where they used to talk and whispered to himself, "God, please don't let Abuja take her from me." But love, once tested by the glitter of the city, rarely returns unchanged. The first day at the NYSC orientation camp in Abuja was a blur of khaki uniforms, sweaty cues, and loud laughter. The air smelled of sun and dust, but Joy walked through it all as though she were born for that stage. From the moment she stepped out of the bus, heads turned. Her tall frame, smooth caramel skin, and bright eyes made her unforgettable. Even the soldiers at the gate paused to watch her walk past, the corners of their mouths lifting in silent admiration. Within a week, she had already become the talk of Platoon 7. She was confident, funny, and quick to smile. During drills, she moved with grace. During campfire nights, she laughed easily, her voice carrying through the crowd. And then came the Platoon Queen contest. Joy wasn't going to contest at first, but her friends insisted. "Joy, have you seen yourself? You are too beautiful to hide. Go there and collect what's yours." She gave in, and as expected, when her name was announced, the cheers nearly lifted the stage. That night, she wore her crown and sash proudly. Flashlights and cameras clicked around her. People wanted selfies. The camp commandant smiled approvingly. In that moment, something subtle shifted in her heart. For the first time, she wasn't just Simon's girl from Boko. She was Joy, the camp queen of Abuja. The drift begins. That night, Simon called, as he always did. "My Joy, how was camp today?" Laughing lightly, "It was fine. We had some activities." Simon, "You sound happy. What happened?" Joy, hesitating, "Oh, nothing really. I'm just tired. I'll tell you later." She didn't tell him about the crown, didn't tell him that she now had admirers everywhere she turned, that she'd barely had a moment to herself, or that she was beginning to enjoy the attention. Her platoon girls, Linda, Kike, and Onyenye, quickly became her closest friends. They were vibrant, stylish, and worldly. They called themselves the A-list, always seated in the front during lectures, always surrounded by the Abuja big boys who came visiting camp with cars and cash. Joy tried to resist at first. She remembered Simon's gentle voice and how hard he'd worked to send her provisions years back. But then one evening, while sitting under a mango tree with her new friends, something shifted again. Linda was scrolling through her phone, showing off a 150,000 naira alert from her boyfriend. "That's just for this week," she said casually, laughing. Joy laughed too, but later that night, she sat alone on her bunk, staring at her 2,000 naira balance. Something in her chest felt empty, not because she needed the money, but because she began to feel she deserved more. 2 weeks into camp, she met Fels. Tall, dark, and soft-spoken, with a voice that carried quiet authority. He worked with an NGO and drove a silver Lexus that gleamed like liquid in the sun. He wasn't loud or flashy like the others, and maybe that's what Joy to him. He noticed her during a morning parade. Later that day, he found her by the canteen. "You walk like you own the camp," said Henry. "And you talk like you know everyone in it," Joy replied shyly. That was how it began. Laughter, glances, and late-night talks after lights out. When camp ended, Henry stayed in touch. He lived in Abuja too, and soon Joy found herself visiting him every weekend. He was generous in his own quiet way. He bought her dresses, took her out to eat, and sent her small amounts now and then. They were beautiful together. Everything was going on well. But after a while, Joy wanted more. She started comparing him to the other men she saw. Men who sent their girlfriends on trips, who bought iPhones and wigs worth hundreds of thousands. Henry gave her enough, but her new friends whispered otherwise. One day, a call came from Rita, one of her roommates back then in school. After catching up for a while, she said, "Babe, that your Henry guy is trying, but please, I feel you deserve better. Girl, seems you don't really know what you deserve." The words stuck like burrs in her heart. Soon, Henry's calls became annoying interruptions. She began to feel he didn't love her enough, didn't invest in her enough. When he couldn't meet one of her expensive requests, she told him curtly, "It's fine," and went silent for days. The relationship withered within 6 months, not because Henry stopped caring, but because Joy's hunger had changed. She broke up with him over the phone, citing distance and misunderstandings. Henry sighed. "Joy, I hope you find what you're looking for." She smiled sadly after the call ended. Barely a month later, Joy accepted Elijah as a boyfriend. She had seen Elijah in a music concert Henry once took her to. She'd excused herself to the bathroom when Elijah followed her. He was glamorous. Elijah dazzles like the stars of heaven, and that moment she was struck in awe. She couldn't say hi when Elijah mouthed hey. That moment, Elijah knew she'd fallen for him, just like every other girls he'd met. He was about to place a kiss on a forehead when Henry walked in on them. "Joy," he said. Henry, I was just leaving. He got me cornered. I was trying to push him off." Henry believed her. He just brushed past Eliza and took her with him to the hall. But her heart never left Elijah. In her quiet moments, the scene played back over and over. A day after, she looked for Elijah on Instagram and sent him a request. They became friends and had always flirted with each other. Elijah was everything Henry wasn't: loud, bold, and magnetic, a popular figure in Abuja's art and music scene. He painted, produced music, and partied like he owned the night. He lived in a world of flash, luxury cars, celebrity friends, champagne weekends. For Joy, it was intoxicating. He bought her a new phone, flew her to Lagos once, took her to concerts where everyone knew his name. She felt unstoppable, glowing, finally living the soft life she had envied from afar. But as quickly as the excitement came, so did the cracks. Elijah's attention was scattered. He was always on his phone, always surrounded by other women, always busy. Sometimes, Joy would find lipstick stains on his shirts or see flirtatious comments on his posts. When she confronted him, he would laugh it off. "You're overthinking, baby. You know you're my main girl," he'd say. She wanted to believe him, but the signs were too many. Nights passed with unanswered calls, lies about business trips, and Instagram stories that told another truth. By the 6th month, Joy was drained. She had the luxury, the spotlight, the attention,
but none of the peace she once knew with Simon. Sometimes, when she lay awake in Elijah's apartment, she'd remember the sound of Simon's laugh over the phone, the sincerity in his voice when he prayed for her before exams. She'd shake off the memory, convincing herself that life was about moving forward, about living big. But deep down, she knew, somewhere along the way, she had lost something she could never quite name.
Joy was exhausted. One day, she sat down in her apartment, recollecting how it got to this point. Simon, Henry, and now Elijah. How he called her Queen Joy. How he told her she deserved more. He told her, "You're not meant for an ordinary life." How he was everything Henry wasn't. He was a whirlwind, the fast cars, the late-night studio sessions he'd accompanied him to, how he made her feel like a star. He called her every morning, took her shopping on weekends, posted her pictures on his story. He introduced her to people who spoke about projects, deals, and evening promised her Dubai trips. Her wardrobe changed, her perfume changed, even her laughter changed, sharper, louder, bolder. Her friends envied her openly. She'd smile proudly, pretending not to care, but deep inside, she was drunk on the life she now lived. A life that sparkled like gold on the surface, but now the cracks are no longer underneath. The first sign came one weekend when she couldn't reach Elijah for 3 days. His phone rang endlessly, then switched off. When he finally called back, his excuse was vague. Network problems, business trip, don't stress me, babe. Joy brushed it aside at first, but then messages from strange women began appearing under his posts, women who used the same pet names he used for her. She tried confronting him. He laughed, kissed her forehead, and said, "You're my number one, Joy. Ignore the noise." But the noise grew louder. Sometimes she'd see him with other girls at events, whispering, touching, laughing, the same way he once looked at her. She started crying more often, scrolling through his page at night, comparing herself to others. Once, when she tried to end things, he laughed in her face. "And what? You know you can't leave me. You're addicted to this life now." And she hated that he was right. The cars, the clubs, the champagne, the attention, they were all parts of a cage she didn't realize she had entered willingly. By their 5th month together, Elijah had completely changed. He became distant, moody, sometimes violent in his words. He accused her of talking too much, being too needy, not understanding his lifestyle. Joy tried to hold on, but the love was already dying, replaced by shame and exhaustion. She had lost Henry, lost herself, and yet she couldn't go back. Simon was a no-no. She can't drop her standards to that point. When Elijah eventually cheated on her openly with one of her close friends, the humiliation broke her completely. For days, she locked herself in her apartment, ignoring calls, crying until her voice cracked. Her friends stopped coming by, her online followers moved on to the next trend. It was during this lonely silence that fate prepared her for her final encounter, the one man who would offer her everything she thought she wanted and take everything she had left. His name was Matthew. Joy met Matthew on a quiet Sunday evening at a friend's birthday dinner in Maitama. The party was elegant, candles flickering on marble tables, violin music gliding softly through the night. He didn't rush toward her like the others. He simply smiled, a calm, confident smile that carried both charm and authority. He was 36, tall, dark-skinned, and impeccably dressed. There was something about him, a quiet power that didn't need to boast. When he spoke, people listened. When he laughed, the room seemed to ease. He wasn't a man of plenty words. Joy felt safe around him. Safe. That was new. Their first conversation lasted hours, and by the end of the night, he asked softly, "Can I see you again, Joy? I feel like I've known you longer than tonight." She smiled. "Maybe you have." And that was the beginning. A love that felt like rest. Matthew was unlike anyone she had ever met. He didn't raise his voice, didn't argue, didn't make promises he couldn't keep. He simply did things. He sent flowers without being asked. He paid her rent before she even mentioned she was due. He took her on quiet trips to Jos, Lagos, and even Ghana once, first class. He never flaunted wealth, but everything around him whispered of it. The soft leather of his car seats, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way waiters hurried to attend to him. He was deliberate, gentle, caring. With Matthew, Joy finally felt she had arrived. Gone were the arguments, the uncertainty, the long nights of wondering if she was enough. Every morning began with sweet messages. "Good morning, my sunshine. Remember, you deserve every beautiful thing this world offers." Every evening ended with soft dinners, slow jazz, and laughter that made her forget everything that came before him. One afternoon, while she was lounging by the pool at his apartment in Guarimpa, her phone buzzed. It was Simon. She froze, watching his name blink across the screen. Her chest tightened with something she couldn't name. Guilt, maybe, or memory. She didn't answer. He called again. Still, she ignored it. A few hours later, she finally sent him a message. It was short, polite, and final. "Hi, Simon. I'm doing fine. Life has taken me in a different direction, and I've moved on. You'll always be remembered for your kindness. I hope you move on too. Joy." She stared at the message for a long while before pressing send. A soft sadness lingered, but it faded as soon as Matthew walked into the room, smiling with a glass of red wine. He kissed her forehead. "Whoever that was, forget them. You're here now." And she did. Joy's parents noticed the change in her tone during calls. She was busier now, more polished, always somewhere or with someone. Her mother asked one evening, "My daughter, have you spoken with Simon lately? He came by the house last week, very humble, very polite." Joy laughed softly. "Mummy, please, I've outgrown that. Simon is in my past. I'm happy where I am now." Her father added quietly, "Joy, just make sure you're safe. Money and cars are not everything. Even if you frequently send money home and provided us a furnished apartment here, I still feel you belong with Simon. He is doing way better than the last time you saw him, and he genuinely loves you." She smiled at the phone and said gently, "Daddy, I'm fine. Don't worry about me." A few days later, she sent them 300,000 naira. Her mother called to thank her, voice full of pride, and that was the end of the conversation. Joy knew how to keep everyone quiet. Generosity had become her shield. With Matthew in her life, Joy glowed differently. Her skin shimmered, her laughter sounded richer, her confidence sharper. She began posting more often on Instagram: expensive restaurants, new designer bags, beach resorts, luxury cars. Her captions were always bold and sweet. "Love will find you when you stop chasing noise." "God finally did it. I'm treated like the queen I am." Her followers multiplied fast. They adored her glow-up story, the transformation from the simple Gboko girl to the Abuja socialite. But she never once posted Matthew's picture. Whenever fans asked, she'd reply playfully, "He's camera shy, and I don't want any girl snatching my blessing." Her comments flooded with heart emojis and praise. "Girl, you're glowing. This love is giving peace. Soft life looks good on you." And truly, for a while, everything did look perfect. Joy moved into Matthew's home fully after 6 months. His house was a masterpiece. Marble floors, quiet halls, art on every wall, a scent of jasmine in every room. He traveled often, but always returned with gifts: jewelry, perfumes, gadgets, clothes. She wanted for nothing.
She even stopped hanging out with her old friends. Most of them had started whispering that she was too lucky, too kept, too mysterious. She didn't care. Her life had finally become what she dreamed of: easy, beautiful, and envied. Matthew told her every day that he loved her. He never shouted, never hit her, never argued. Sometimes he disappeared for a few days without explanation. But when he returned, he'd simply say, "Business, my love. You know how it is." And she'd nod, letting it go, because love felt too sweet to question. Joy didn't notice how rarely Matthew introduced her to anyone. She didn't realize he never took her home to meet family, or that she didn't even know the company he worked for. All she saw was the glow, the daily gifts, the peace, the affection. Her life was curated perfection, wrapped in ribbons and filters. She had what she once thought she wanted: wealth, status, luxury, and a man who seemed endlessly devoted. But sometimes, when she sat by the window watching the city lights at night, she'd feel an ache she couldn't explain, like something deep inside her was quietly asking, "Is this real?" She would quickly shake it off, smile, and scroll through Instagram. Because in her world, nothing bad could happen anymore. Or so she believed.
Joy's life had never been brighter. Every day with Matthew felt like walking through the life she once only saw in movies, the kind where love sparkles, laughter is effortless, and every dream suddenly feels within reach. He was charming, soft-spoken, and attentive. He remembered the smallest details: the first perfume she ever bought as a student, the color of her NYSC khaki cap, the way she liked her coffee sweet and milky. Every morning, he called her my sunrise. Every evening, he told her, "You make my world softer." For Joy, who once struggled through nights of hunger and loneliness as a student, this felt like destiny finally rewarding her. They lived in a quiet, well-furnished duplex on the outskirts of Abuja, surrounded by trees, far from the city's noise, the kind of place she used to pass by as a student and whisper to herself, "Someday." Now, someday was here. The house had everything: a pool that caught the sunlight like glass, a walk-in closet full of clothes she hadn't even unwrapped, and a kitchen filled with imported groceries she barely recognized. Matthew often said, "You deserve the world, Joy. Let me give it to you." And she let him. He sent her money before she ever asked, bought her a car, and paid for her younger brother's school fees when her father mentioned they were struggling. Her parents couldn't stop praising him, though they'd never met him in person. Joy's social media turned into a window of luxury: pictures of her sipping wine in resorts, lounging by pools, dressed in silk pajamas and luxury shoes. She captioned them with quotes like, "When peace found me, it wore his name." Matt, if at all it was his real name, when fans and friends teased her to show her mystery man, she'd giggle and reply, "I can't, he's too fine, some of you will snatch him." It became a running joke online, one that always got hundreds of comments and fire emojis. What they didn't know was that Matthew forbade her from posting him. One night, when she tried to take a selfie of them in bed, he stopped her hand mid-air. "Don't post me, Joy," he said softly, his tone serious but tender. "I hate being out there. I love my privacy. Let's keep this between us. The moment you start showing people, they'll ruin what's beautiful." And she agreed, because when you're in love, you confuse secrecy with protection. Simon called twice that week. His name flashed across her screen like a ghost from another lifetime: Simon Mechanic. She stared at the phone, her chest tightening, but didn't pick up. The third time, she replied with a message that sounded calm and final. "Simon, this will be the last time I will say this. I've moved on. You'll always be remembered, but you should too. Please be happy. I am." Then she blocked his number, not out of hate, but because she wanted to keep her illusion perfect.
In her mind, the chapter with Simon belonged to another version of herself, the girl who wore faded jeans, who waited by the phone for midnight calls, who prayed for provisions. That girl was gone. Now she was Joy, Matthew's woman. When her mother tried bringing Simon up again, Joy brushed it aside. "Mummy, please, let's not talk about the past. Simon was good, but life moves on. Besides, Matthew takes care of me well. I'll bring him home soon, I promise." To calm them further, she began sending money home, more than she ever had. Her parents were proud. Her father would say to the neighbors, "Our daughter found a good man. Abuja changed her story." They didn't know how far that change would go. One warm Sunday afternoon, while rearranging things in the hallway, Joy noticed something strange, a door she had somehow never paid attention to. It was at the far end, beside the guest room. Heavy, mahogany, glossy, sealed with a silver padlock that glinted even in dim light. At first, she ignored it, but over the next few days, her curiosity grew. She realized Matthew never went near it, not once since she moved in. One afternoon, while he was away, she tried the handle. Locked. She bent down, peered through the keyhole, pitch darkness. It felt odd. The rest of the house was warm and full of light, but that door, it seemed to swallow the light around it. When Matthew returned, she brought it up casually over dinner. "Babe," she began, "what's behind that locked door in the hallway?" Matthew paused. For the briefest second, something unreadable flickered in his eyes. Then he smiled, calm, reassuring. "That used to be my ex's room," he said quietly. "She lived here once, broke my heart, packed her things, and left. I locked that door because it reminds me of pain I never want to feel again." Joy blinked. "Your ex?" He nodded, then reached for her hand across the table. "But now, I thank God she left, because it brought you to me. You healed me, Joy. Someday, I'll open that room again, maybe turn it into a nursery when we have kids." Her heart melted at his words. The idea of building a family with him erased every trace of suspicion. Still, little things began to shift. There were nights he came home late, sometimes past midnight. When she asked where he'd been, he always smiled and said, "Business meetings, love. I'm trying to secure something big for us." Sometimes he smelled faintly of antiseptic. Other times, he'd go to the backyard shed and stay there for hours, alone. One night, she woke up and found him sitting in the dark, his phone's glow illuminative in his face. He was typing fast, focused. When she asked who he was chatting with, he turned off the phone instantly and pulled her close. "Work talk, baby. You worry too much." She laughed softly, burying her face in his chest. Love had made her blind, or maybe she didn't want to see. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in Bakoto, Simon had building a new life, brick by brick. After her message, he cried that night until dawn. But the next morning, he got up and made a decision. He wouldn't let her memory destroy him. He threw himself into his mechanic business as always. At this time, he already has 4 workshops. He'd started importing spare parts and opened 3 separate stores. He trained young apprentices who called him Oba Simon. He had built a name respected across the state, the humble, honest man who never cheated anyone. When he visited Joy's family house one afternoon, it wasn't to accuse, it was to make peace. He told her parents calmly that he was moving on. Her mother cried quietly. "Simon, you were like a son to us. If Joy ever comes back, we'll tell her what she lost. May God bless you, my son." He smiled faintly and said, "Mama, I've forgiven her already. Tell her I wish her well." Then he left, feeling lighter. A few months later, he started seeing Mercy, a woman who had always liked him from afar, but respected his relationship with Joy. She was kind, honest, and loved him for who he was, not for what he had. For the first time in years, Simon began to laugh again. Back at Abuja, Joy's happiness glittered brighter, on the surface. She and Matthew began hosting small gatherings, expensive dinners with a few of his business friends. They looked sophisticated, always well-dressed, but Joy noticed they rarely talked much about themselves. When she asked what kind of business they did, Matthew would chuckle, "We deal in high-value exports, medical supplies, and rare goods. You wouldn't understand all the details." Sometimes, when he took calls in her presence, he'd switch to a different language, something between Hausa and French. When she asked about it, he'd say, "It's work, love. Trust me, everything I do is for us." And she did, because for the first time in her life, Joy had everything she thought she wanted. She couldn't see that she was living in a beautifully built cage.
The first time Joy felt something was truly wrong was on a rainy Thursday night. She had been alone at home. Matthew had left 2 days earlier, saying he needed to attend a business retreat in Lagos. The house, usually warm with his laughter and scented candles, now felt like a cold, echoing shell. Even the air smelled different, heavy, metallic. While trying to fetch a blanket from the hallway closet, she felt it. A smell, strong, rusted, like a smell of a metal coming from behind the locked door. She froze. For a moment, she thought she imagined it, but then it came again, chills crawling up her skin. Her heart hammered. The key. She'd once seen Matthew drop a ring of keys into the drawer of his bedside cabinet. That night, trembling, she went into the room, found them, and carried them back to the hallway. Her hands shook so badly she dropped the keys twice before finding the one that fit. When the lock clicked open, a wave of cold air escaped from the room, damp, sour, and heavy with something she couldn't name. She switched on the light, and what she saw froze her to the marrow. The room wasn't a bedroom. It was a lab. Metal tables lined the walls, stained with dark smudges. Surgical gloves, scalpels, and strange instruments lay scattered around. On one table was a human organ preserved in a glass jar. Beside it, photographs, dozens of them. She picked one up with trembling hands. It was a woman, beautiful, smiling, the kind of smile Joy had seen in her own pictures. The same woman Matthew once said was his ex. But in the next photo, the woman's face was pale, her body motionless, stitched. Joy dropped the picture, her stomach churning. Her legs weakened, and she stumbled back, covering her mouth as bile rose in her throat. Suddenly, her phone rang, the shrill sound slicing through the silence. Matthew. Her hands trembled as she picked up. "Babe," she stammered. His voice was calm, too calm. "Why are you in that room, Joy?" She froze. Her eyes darted to the CCTV camera in the corner, small, almost hidden near the ceiling. "You shouldn't have gone there," he continued, voice steady. "You weren't supposed to see that part of me." Tears welled in her eyes. "What is this, Matthew? What are you doing? What is all this?" A long pause. Then, in a voice so soft it was chilling, he said, "I thought you were different. I really wanted to keep you longer." The line went dead. Panic surged through her veins. She grabbed her phone and keys, ran for the door, but when she tried to open it, it wouldn't budge. It was locked from outside. She screamed, pounded, cried. Hours passed. The power went out, and in the darkness, she heard footsteps approaching. The last thing she remembered was his silhouette at the door, calm and collected, holding a syringe. Then, nothing. 3 days later, passers-by on a dusty road near the outskirts of Abuja discovered her body, dumped in an open field. Parts of her were gone. The police arrived, cordoned off the scene, but there was no Matthew, no trace of him. The house she once lived in had been emptied overnight, every trace of him erased as if he had never existed. His real name was not even Matthew.
Her parents were called to identify the body. Her mother fainted on sight. Her father wept uncontrollably, clutching her lifeless hand, whispering prayers that came too late. When Simon heard the news, he locked himself in his room for 2 days. No one saw him. On the 3rd day, he walked into his workshop, gathered his apprentices, and said in a low, breaking voice, "Let this teach you something, boys. Don't ever envy another man's shine. The grass only looks greener till you see what's buried beneath it." He sat in silence for a long time, staring at the photo he still kept of Joy, taken years ago when she was younger, brighter, innocent. He forgave her once more, this time from a deeper place, but it didn't stop the ache. News outlets carried the story briefly. Young Abuja woman found dead. Police suspect organ trafficking ring. Social media buzzed for days. Some of her old friends posted her photos, writing, "Rest in peace, Queen Joy," beneath her pictures. Others whispered about the man no one had ever seen, the one she called Matthew. But there were no leads, no arrests. Matthew had vanished, like smoke after a storm. Months later, Simon and Mercy quietly got married. There were no loud celebrations, no dancing till dawn, just a quiet union, witnessed by close family. But even as he smiled for the camera, Simon's heart carried a shadow. Sometimes he'd drive past a place that reminded him of her, the university gate, the bus stop where they used to meet, the roadside vendor who sold the puff-puff she loved, and his chest would tighten. He didn't hate her, he pitied her. Because he now understood, Joy hadn't just lost her life, she'd lost herself long before that. In the end, Joy's story became a silent warning whispered by mothers to their daughters. Don't choose luxury over love. Don't trade sincerity for glitter, because not every man who feeds you well means you well. Her name faded from headlines, but lived in memory, as a reminder that the prettiest roads sometimes lead straight into the darkest places.